Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the first 30 to 45 minutes of the Frosthaven campaign. The aim here is to really try and cover a lot of core bases. So we're going to start off with character creation, including talking about the actual mercenaries themselves, what starting cards you might want to use on each class, as well as the starting items you might want. We'll then go through the first scenario. We'll talk about key concepts from the Haven games, including monster focus, how the monster AI works, how to deal with the monsters in different ways, how to look for successful ways to deal with those monsters, really walking you through those different things. We'll talk about UI elements, we'll talk about hotkeys, little tricks of the trade that I've picked up over the years playing the Haven games, and then hopefully we will kind of conclude with doing the outpost phase, where we will go through all of that outpost phase, what all the different icons mean, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, things to look for, so you can hopefully successfully complete one kind of full circuit of the game, if you like, from completing a scenario, completing an outpost phase, ready to do your next scenario. A big thank you to Ark and Snapshot Games for sponsoring this video. If you would like to check out Frosthaven Digital, there is a link to the Steam page in the description and in the pinned comment. So before we talk about mercenaries specifically and what cards and starting items to use with them, I want to talk about card selection in general in Frosthaven. If you come from Gloomhaven, you're probably used to there being very prevalent builds where one build on a character was particularly better than others, and especially in certain combinations of items or in certain compositions was just flat out better. There wasn't really much argument there. It was the better ability. In Frosthaven, that's much less the case. Most cards in Frosthaven have been kind of kept a reasonably standard power level, and most cards situationally can be very, very strong. So you need to keep an eye on these cards and all of your cards really, because depending on your party composition, depending on the scenario you're playing, depending on the enemies and the types of things the enemies can do in a scenario, pretty much every card has its place in Frosthaven. So you do need to sometimes shift your mindset a little bit away from what are the strongest cards, I just want to play the strongest things. You need to a little bit open and more flexible to maybe changing your cards between scenarios. So with that said, let's get into the individual mercenaries. So I'm only briefly going to touch on the different characters just so we can get into a scenario nice and quickly. I will have full guides for characters coming at some point in the future, but just so that you can get an idea of how to start out, I'm going to be using the Bannerspear. The items we're going to be using is winged shoes, and we're going to be using a heater shield for our starting items. The Bannerspear has two kind of really core mechanics, maybe three if you want to argue it, but realistically her mechanics are formations. This is to do with your positioning in relation to the allies, your allies' positioning, which is the blue hex, and then the enemy position, which is the red hex. And then also we have banners. These are things that we can place down on the ground that don't move. They're like summons that don't move, but they will give us some kind of bonus effect, or our allies some kind of bonus effect or a buff, which can be quite strong. The other things we kind of do is we move either these banners around. There's possibilities to move these around with some of your abilities. Say for example, regroup can do that for you, as well as you potentially can move your allies around. You can kind of heal a little bit, and you can tank a little bit as well with something like the bottom of Unbreakable Wall giving you a persistent shield for an entire scenario. So those characters can be quite versatile. So if we go into the cards, so I've selected 8 cards to begin with for our starting hand as our kind of core cards. That these are ones that you can rely on. They're very easy to execute for the most part, and they give you a bit of a feel for the character. You get to do a bit of everything. So for the first couple of scenarios, this is a very nice way for you to feel your way out with a character. So we have set for the charge, javelin, regroup, combined effort, at all costs, tip of the spear, rallying cry, and unbreakable wall. Then I think we move on to some different cards which you can kind of bring in depending on what you want to do for the last 2 cards, just to fill in those gaps. So potentially you could use resolved courage, pincer movement, or potentially deflecting maneuver, whichever one you feel kind of a little bit more comfortable with. I think I'm going to be playing this character as a little bit more of a tanky frontline character. So I'm going to pick deflecting maneuver because that's quite a good card. The top of this card is quite good for if you're going to be taking some damage or taking damage, as well as the bottom is very good because this means that you gain shield against ranged attacks for that round. So this is 2 shield against range. That's what that symbol means. So that can be quite nice if we're getting attacked by lots of archers. And I know there's archers in the first scenario. And then I think secondly, we're going to look at taking something like resolved courage, because this is also another way for us to prevent our enemies from running away from us. Nice early initiative and very easy potentially to do. I will, however, also recommend that you could play Driving Inspiration if you're looking for something that's a bit easy to play. However, because we're going to be using the Unbreakable Wall, this does lower our range of our ranged attacks. So that means that instead of this being a range 4, it'll be a range 3. And we're already running Javelin, which is a range 3, so that would now become a range 2. Makes it a little bit harder to hit. So I think that's a really good set of 10 cards to just give you a flavor for this character and have early success. And then you can start to tailor in some of the other cards, maybe swap around a little bit if you get a feel for needing something else, or if you think that you find a card is just not really kind of working very well in your party comp. Next up, we have the Boneshaper, the Necromancer style character. This is someone who's going to potentially spawn hordes of skeletons, blow those skeletons up with exploding corpse style effects to be able to deal damage that way. Is going to sacrifice their own life to be able to resummon those skeletons. So if you're into that kind of vibe, summon kind of vibe, then this character is probably for you. In terms of items, Warden's Robes is slam dunk the best starting item for this character, and it's probably one you won't want to actually pretty much ever replace. I would find it very hard to replace this item because it's going to help keep your summons alive in the long run, which is kind of a good thing really until you start exploding them yourself. Now the Boneshaper has 12 cards, so a big grip of cards that they can do. And I say they're mostly going to revolve around playing these shambling skeletons, or at least that's how I would suggest playing this character. You do have a different build that you can go high level, and you can kind of start to maybe focus on just having one really good summon and then controlling that summon and making that summon do lots of attacks with some other cards. So you can go down the route of having maybe just one or two more kind of impactful summons. However, they are lost, so if they ever die, then that's it, they're gone. Whereas the skeletons, they can come back because they're non-burn summon abilities, so really strong. But they do require you to pay 2 life each time you summon them. These are the 12 cards that I'm going to suggest that you start with, just to give yourself a bit of a flavor of what this character can do. I do recommend that you will probably end up either dropping Angry Spirits and picking up Approach Oblivion if you're going to go more into the skeleton build eventually. However, level 1, you just want to get a feel for what this character can do. I feel like this is a pretty safe selection of cards to begin with. You're also going to need lots of healing abilities, so it's important that you have Fell Remedy to heal yourself back up so that you can keep playing skeletons. And also you're going to want Flow of the Black River to do that as well. So the cards that I've got selected here is pretty much very similar to what the game will automatically suggest you, to be honest. You've got Flow of the Black River, Exploding Corpse, Malicious Conversion, Fell Remedy, Dark Tidings, Decaying Will, Eternal Torment, Damned Horde, Angry Spirits, Return Servant, Command of the Wretched, and Life in Death. The Drifter is the jack of all trades character, really can do everything this game has to offer in terms of it can do melee damage, it can do range damage, it can move really fast and far, it can retaliate, it can shield up so it can tank. It can kind of do a little bit of everything really. The only thing it can't do is control enemies really effectively. It's kind of like an all-in kill type scenario with the Drifter. We don't really get access to some of those premium control abilities like disarm, immobilize, stun, that kind of stuff. But we do a hell of a lot of damage instead. The 2 items that I would heavily suggest, especially for the kind of build that I'm going to be suggesting when we go to cards, is Amulet of Life and Heater Shield. The reason why Amulet of Life is because it combos incredibly well with a card that we will see in a second, which will allow us to heal a lot of health over time. So the way that the Drifter gets its value and its unique mechanic is through its passive bonuses and its charges that they have. So what I was alluding to with the Amulet of Health is we have this card Continuous Health. If we play the bottom of ability, on our next 6 heals, we gain +2 health. We also gain XP. I think it's up to 3 XP by doing this action as well at certain points when we use a certain number of charges. So that's also something to consider. You will actually get XP through this, although there is none displayed currently in the digital implementation. So a card like this, we can gain a lot of health. An Amulet of Life we can use to just do a heal 1 action, and it'll actually turn into a heal 3, which is really, really strong. But the way this character works is by playing these kind of passive bonuses to different actions that we can do, and then we try and use them and then recover them in really smart ways. So bloodletting, for example, allows us to, if we kill something, we get to regain a use of one of our active bonuses. So, you know, if we were down to 4, this would then go up to 5 if we chose this one, for example. Precision aim gives us 6 ranged attacks, add plus range and 1 attack. So again, we can use some of these charges, then potentially we can get them back. You also have an ability like this, move 2, regain a use of 1 of your active bonuses. So what I really want you to get used to when you're first playing this character is to really just play 2 of these and to really get used to the idea of using the charges and then regaining the charges. And that's all that you really need to do. And then once you get kind of quite proficient at balancing that, just having 2, then maybe you can introduce a 3rd or maybe a 4th, or then change the ones that you want to use depending on the scenario. But generally speaking, with this character, you're probably either going to go for a kind of melee build using continuous health to keep yourself going with your health, or you're probably going to go more of a ranged type build in the long run. But to begin with, we're just going to start with basically the cards that they suggest. And then the cards that we're going to highlight is continuous health here. And then the other one that I want to really highlight is crushing weight. But when we get into the scenario, we'll go through and play these. But yeah, don't fall into the trap, I would say, of selecting Destructive Fury very early on. No Remorse, I think, as well, is another one where it's kind of like a little bit of an all-in play. You don't really need a heal this big because continuous health will allow you to get very big. You know, a heal of 5 is a massive amount of health. That's pretty much an entire whole heal for a character at this level. That's kind of a bit overkill really here, so I don't think we need to worry about that. The only other card I would maybe recommend in certain scenarios early on is Fortitude, because Fortitude will allow you to go through shields with its Pierce ability, so it's very good against enemies that have high shield values. And we will definitely come up across an enemy with shield in this scenario, and an enemy that can give itself shield in this scenario. But usually you can fight through 1 shield. It's usually when you get to the enemies that have 2 or 3 shield when you really start to think about something like Fortitude. And last up, making up our 4-person party, is going to be the Deathwalker today. This is a character that uses shadows, creates a shadow on the board, which is something that they can then move around. It moves through allies, through enemies, unrestricted. It doesn't count as occupying a space, and it gives us some bonuses to our attacks if we consume them. It can make enemies kind of be debuffed by moving through it, or ending their turn on it, or us creating on top of them, stuff like that. We can teleport between it. So this character very much is hanging around at the back and then emerging from the shadows to do some big damage attacks, as well as muddling enemies and kind of like confusing them and stuff like that. So quite a unique play style, and probably the most complex of the 4 characters that we're going to be playing today, but hopefully we can get through it. We're using leather armor here and poison dagger as our 2 starting items. Leather armor just to give us a little bit of extra survivability because we're not a heavy armor wearer, and poison dagger because we are actually a melee based character in terms of how we're attacking, so that will just allow us to amp up some of our damage a little bit with some of our attacks later on. So with the Deathwalker, we have a 11 card hand, and these are the abilities that I would suggest that we are going to bring. We'll talk a lot about which ones we're going to use a little bit more actively while we're in the scenario. But again, I feel like this will give you a nice feel for the different things that this character can do without kind of closing yourself off from a particular build at level 1, you know, being very solely focused on one way of playing. This character has sort of 2 general ways of playing using their shadow mechanic, and that is either creating these shadows and then removing them in quite quick succession to get big buffs to our damage, to then attack something and hopefully kill it, to then create another shadow later on, also generating elements and then consuming them as well, doing sort of a similar kind of thing. That's a big part of the character, and probably the main way that people like to play this character, I would say. But there is also ways where you kind of get a shadows matter type strategy, where you want to actually go wide with shadows. You want to create a lot of shadows onto the board, and then you want to kind of get bonuses for how many shadows you have on the board. And that's a way you can use Strength of the Abyss and Wave of Anguish are 2 cards that are very good at sort of capitalizing on that. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually not play with these 2 cards, because we're going to go with the kind of most prevalent way of playing, which I think is probably the most fun and rewarding early on, which is to go with the Call to the Abyss. It's a bit annoying that it cuts the cards off here on the side, but here you go. What this is basically we get to mark a target, and then whenever that target dies, we get to place a shadow in or adjacent to the hex it occupies. So this can be a way that we can kind of get shadows up quite quickly. And then basically we're going to make a shadow, use a shadow, make a shadow, use a shadow. that kind of thing. That's the general kind of gist of this character. But when we get into the scenario, we'll definitely go through it a little bit more. I would say that cards like Rest in the Shade here are a little bit of a trap. This particular card I think is better if you are doing the Shadows Matter strategy as well. So as you say, we've kind of left out those 3 cards, which I think are a little bit more tailored to that build, but it's also a bit more of a harder build to execute at level 1 in my opinion, and without that experience of being able to really move them around effectively. So I would suggest we stick on the Call to the Abyss plan at level 1. Both the Blinkblade and the Gemini are more advanced characters, so we're actually not going to talk about them in this video because I've got to try and just kind of keep this video a little bit more focused. We will talk about them in the future, in future videos, I do promise. They are more advanced characters, so I would suggest that you stay away from these 2. So if you are playing 4 players, then I would suggest that you stick to Bannerspear, Boneshaper, Drifter, and Deathwalker as your 4. If you are playing with only 3 mercenaries, then potentially you might consider not playing with the Deathwalker, because I would consider that to be sort of medium kind of level complexity as well, getting up towards this level potentially. And then if you're playing with 2, then you're probably okay to play a combination of these 3, as long as you are playing like the Bannerspear with the Boneshaper. I would say the Bannerspear is a little bit weaker without allies, so really you want lots of summons to make the Bannerspear shine in a very easy way. So Boneshaper, Bannerspear, great 2 mercenary combo, or you could go Drifter, Boneshaper would also be fine. Okay, so going into the first scenario, we've got to pick our battle goals. If you do want to edit any of your cards, you can just hover over your portrait and right click and go to edit, and this is where you can get your hand management and stuff. So if you do want to do that before you go into a scenario, make sure you do that. It's very easy to skip over for the first scenario especially, so make sure you do that. In terms of battle goals, we're going to go through some of these. Sleeper, have 1 or more cards in your hand each time you rest. That's pretty simple for this character to pull off, I would suggest. Killing an enemy with disadvantage is a bit situational. Requires obviously a good pull, or an enemy maybe at like 1 health or 2 health, and we kind of get to finish it off. So I would suggest that Sleeper is probably the easiest. Dawdler is a very tricky one, especially for a character that might want to go early to kind of tank for the team. So I would suggest that Dawdler, although 2 perk marks, it's pretty doable if you're an experienced player. I would suggest staying away from it on these kinds of first attempts. If you're only playing character for the first time, you don't want to hinder yourself with something like this. Sleeper, very easy to achieve, even if you're playing the character for the first time. Boneshaper, we have Wastrel, we have Assassin, and we have Recluse. Assassin, again, 2 perk mark 1, kill an enemy before it takes its first turn. From experience, I'll tell you this one is actually much harder than it might seem. We actually only have 2 rooms in the first scenario, which means that we actually only have 2 rounds where this is even only a possibility to happen, you know? And the very first round, it's probably never going to happen because as the Boneshaper, we want to summon things. So it's not going to happen for us. We'd have 1 round where it could potentially be possible. But yeah, it's just not going to happen. So I think we stick away from Assassin. Wastrel, lose a card to negate 2 or less damage from an attack. Specifically, that's from an attack, not just from damage, so it doesn't work with our summons. So I don't think that's a particularly good one. Recluse, never end your turn adjacent to any other hero, but we would gain 1 additional perk mark for 4 heroes. Incredibly hard with summons, and the fact that this character often just stays in one place, doesn't play any movement cards. So we're going to have to go for Wastrel and just kind of hope that the opportunity comes up. For the Drifter, we have Perfectionist, end the quest at maximum health. Overachiever, kill an enemy and open a door in the same turn, in either order. That's kind of doable, but sometimes a bit risky, not good strategy to just open doors willy-nilly, so I don't know if we'll be doing that. Assistant, kill an enemy attacked by any of your allies earlier in the same round. Very, very easy perk to achieve, so I think we'll go for that. Perfectionist is one that we could potentially do with continuous health, but it does require that we don't get unlucky in the last few rounds, or we accidentally burn through our heal cards and our continuous health. So Assistant is much easier, in my opinion, to do. And then the Deathwalker, we have Ravager, perform 2 lost actions in the same turn. Cleaner, collect 3 or more loot bags in the same turn. Or Opener, be the first to kill a monster during the quest. Not a huge fan of these ones that can only really be achieved almost in 1 round, or, you know, once the opportunity's gone, it's gone, right? Opener, If you're not the first, that's it. You're done. No more opportunities to earn your battle goal. Cleaner is possible. We do have a loot card that's pretty good, but might be a bit difficult with this number of mercenaries and with summons as well, blocking hexes and stuff like that. Might be difficult for us. Ravager, pretty simple. All you need to do is just find 2 cards. One of them could just be like a big heal or something like that. So in theory, Ravager is very simple to do. You can wait right until the very end of the scenario and maybe just burn 2 cards. So we'll go for that. In terms of other information that you receive here on this screen, you have the name of the scenario at the top there. You have the kind of win conditions or what the goal is of the scenario. You have the enemies inside the scenario, and you have the loot bag rewards. So this is the kind of loot that we can pick up on the floor from the bags that drop from enemies, or the bags that are just there on the floor in the scenario as well. So let's crack into it. Okay, so we're in the scenario in an opening room with 4 mercenaries. We have in here, we have an Algox guard, an Algox priest, and 2 archers, as well as a city guard. We have our objectives up here in the top right hand corner, so kill all enemies. We also need to protect as many city guards as possible. I do know that depending on how many city guards survive in this scenario, that will depend on the reward that you get. So the more that survive, the better the reward that you're going to get. In this room as well, we've got a loot bag there as well, and a door at the other end. A couple of little hotkeys for you, which you might find useful. If you hold tab, it will actually give you the hex layout of the level, so you can see what is in available hex, which is the white, what might be difficult terrain, so it costs you extra movement to be able to walk onto and over this. An obstacle, which you have here, which is something that you cannot move through unless you have jump or fly. Or also like any loot, for example, that might be there, and of course the enemies. So that's a very nice way of getting a little quick overlay into the scenario. Up here we have, in the top left, we have our settings, we have the codex, we have the animation speed, which can be quite nice. You can change the animation speed all the way up to 5 times, which can really speed up the game. We'll be probably playing on 3 times, I think, today. We might move it to 1 for the beginning, but we may move it up to 3 just so that we can get through at a decent pace. And then, of course, we've got our party. So you can click here to view all of the cards that you have in your party. Very simple way of doing it. You can also just hold Alt as a little hotkey there, tip for you. One other tip that you might like for the hotkey is line of sight. Line of sight is important in this game and can be blocked. If you hold the L key, you can drag from one hex to another hex, and it will tell you if there is line of sight. If there is one continuous white line or more, then you have line of sight to that hex. This can be quite important because although this hex here, this catches me out a few times, looks like it might have line of sight of this hex, it actually does not. As you can see, there are no white lines between the two. So just something to bear in mind. Line of sight does matter in this game, and it can be a very good way, for example here, of preventing enemies from attacking you as well. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's start with our Bannerspear. Our Bannerspear wants to be right in the front, so we are going to move them to the front. I think we want to move Deathwalker to the back, and we probably want to move the Drifter also to the front. I actually think maybe we'll put the Bannerspear there, so they're just a little bit closer. That feels good. For the Bannerspear, I think a really good opening turn for us, especially in this room with the Algox Guard, is we're going to go for Javelin, and we're going to go for Unbreakable Wall on the bottom. So we'll throw the Javelin first, and then we'll use the bottom of Unbreakable Wall to give us a nice shield. So that will set us up quite nicely for the beginning of the scenario. In terms of how monsters will act, we'll talk a little bit about monster focus when the monsters take their turn. But the way that monster focus generally works is that they're always going to move towards the enemy that is closest to them. And then if there is a tie, which there would be here, it's to the person who went first with the lowest initiative of the two. That's who they're going to target in general. They will also move and stuff to be able to potentially get more targets if they have more targets as well. Another thing you can do is that you can inspect by clicking in the middle mouse button onto enemies. This will show you what their base health is, their base move, and their base attack. So these are the kind of values of things you can expect to see. I am playing on veteran difficulty, so that is why the enemies are level 1 and not level 0. If you do play on a level of difficulty below veteran, they would be a level 0 here. You can also see that they have innate shield, and that potentially they have innate pierce as well. So they actually ignore shield as well. So they can be very annoying. And then you have your archers here as well with the kind of thing that they can do. This will also show you the attack modifier deck. So this, whenever an enemy makes an attack, or whenever you make an attack, you will draw from your attack modifier deck. So the monsters have their own, so they share an attack modifier deck. The players have one each. And so you will draw from this modifier deck to see what the result of the attack is. You have a crit, which is ×2, and you have a miss. So they can completely miss and do no damage, or they could do double damage. So it is possible. Whenever the miss or the ×2 is drawn at the end of that round, the whole deck will be shuffled again. So that's the way that it kind of keeps refilling itself. So okay, so let's just briefly go into like the first turn. So the first turn for the Bannerspear here, I think is very good. Throw a javelin, get our shield up, so we're kind of ready to go to do a bit of tanking. I think with the Boneshaper, it's going to be let's make a skeleton, because that's what we do best. So making a skeleton is something we are very, very good at. So that's what we're going to do. In terms of other things we might want to do, there probably isn't too much. However, we could do a little move potentially to kind of get going. Like I said, this character doesn't move that much, so that's something to be wary of. What we could do is we could play Angry Spirits bottom here, just as a preemptive measure that next time a monster kills one of our summons, they're going to suffer 2 damage. And that will stay in play until that happens. So we could play that because it'll probably be some free damage to an enemy at some point anyway. Not too shabby. In terms of the Drifter, we're going to want to play 2 of our persistent abilities straight away to be able to start those charges going. So Crushing Weight, I think, is more of, it is my favorite, and then Continuous Health along with it too. In terms of initiative selection here, it doesn't really matter. The Bannerspear is going to go first to hopefully tank any incoming damage if we do take it. However, we also have this guard back here who is unfortunately going to take some damage. The good thing is about the guards, though, is that they are pretty robust, so they will be able to take a few hits because of that shield too. Although this guy could draw a ×2 and just blow this up, that is possible. We'll take that risk on the first turn of the game. We certainly won't lose the scenario in that case. The next thing we want to do really is we want to get up our persistent ability here for the Deathwalker to get ourselves going. So we're going to play Call to the Abyss for the top action to sort of get that ability going. And then I think going with something like Lingering Rot isn't a bad idea because it could potentially help us kill something a little bit quicker. Or we could use Call of Doom to get a element going for us. And in fact, actually, I think going Call of Doom is better here because we can get an element going, which then means that maybe we can do like Black Barrage, for example, and do a nice big attack, which might kill something, which then potentially gives us the opportunity. Well, we can do some damage, right? We can then mark some targets to then maybe start getting some shadows. So I think that's a good plan. Okay. So the enemy will then draw and we'll see what they're doing. So this is the initiative value, and that will filter into the initiative track at the top now. So the Aalborg's Priest is doing an attack target too. And actually did a massive attack on the city guards. So that's a little bit unlucky for us. We could use our shield here, but because this has a pierce, we're not going to. The curse as well is pretty nasty. What a curse is a miss, basically. So it shuffles in another miss card into your deck. When you draw a curse, it does get removed from your deck. But you know, having another miss in there that will eventually get pulled is not a great thing. Well, some damage to this. 3 damage. That's exactly what we expected. And then we will play our shield. Our shield isn't very good against the priests, but it is very good against the archers and the guards. So although, you know, the pierce on the priest is a little bit annoying, the shield is still very good against the majority of enemies in this scenario. In fact, we will see it now, maybe? No? Okay, they don't quite have the range. That's good. Okay, so good job. We've got that shield played now. We can also play this to get another shield. Okay, great. So now we can go for our Drifter turn. So we'll play Crushing Weight. And then we'll play Continuous Health. So now we're set up to start doing really nice melee attacks and being able to heal ourselves too. So we can play very aggressively on this character if we want to. With the Deathwalker, we'll play Call to the Abyss. And then we will move here. I think what we might want to do is think about how we're going to play the next turn. So a very common way of playing in the Haven games is to kind of weave your initiative in a smart way. Now, we went last here, which was intentional. We went late because we wanted the enemy to kind of move a little bit towards us, help break up that ground, because otherwise we've got to cover that ground. So going late when an enemy is far away, it's a pretty good move because it means that they're going to have to come towards you if they want to attack, right? So they're always going to move towards you to try and do that attack. So doing late initiative when you want to encourage those enemies to move forward is good. And then going early to then capitalize on that kind of momentum that you've built. So now, for example, we could go up and we could play quite aggressively here. I don't think we have line of sight, unfortunately, from there to there. So I think we probably do want to go up to this spot here. We could also potentially try and set up a nice pattern or formation for our Bannerspear. That's another thing to think about. As you can see here, tip of the spear, I think this location here would be very good next turn. So we're going to try and maybe focus on doing that, moving there and doing a tip of the spear. But I think we can go here because ultimately I think we want to try and target these archers at the back. They are probably the biggest threat in this room. It is a good idea to try and identify what is the biggest threat. You may think it's the priest because it's kind of like the little mini boss. And yes, it's doing cursing. Yes, it's doing attacks. And it can heal as well. But the archers are just an absolute nuisance because they attack every single turn. They don't have a card in their deck that isn't an attack, like an ability in their deck that isn't an attack. Whereas the Algox Guard has one that just heals and shields, basically, or just shields and retaliates or something, I believe. So, you know, basically a do nothing card that you can kind of run away from and it doesn't really affect you. And the priest might just heal as well. So that's also kind of like a little bit of a do nothing. So I actually feel like the biggest threat is going to be these archers, especially if they attack for like 4 every single round. So now we can make the shambling skeleton, which I think we're going to do. We'll put shambling skeleton down there. Let's use life. Okay. And we'll play the bomb of switch. You see, we already would have lost that battle goal. So, you know, something to consider. Okay, so we certainly now want to look at tip of the spear here, I think, as a very good ability, because also we have that Pierce 3. I was hoping to maybe play deflecting maneuver because we have that air that we created. But to be honest, I think just it's too nice. Tip of the spear here is too nice. And you certainly need to take those opportunities when they come. Now, I could use my set for the charge, which is 6 initiative. I definitely want to go early to try and capitalize on this positioning. However, if I do that, I will be wasting that 4 movement with just a move 1. So I think what I actually really want to do is I probably just want to use Resolved Courage here as a move 2. Feels like a little bit of a waste, but having a 10 initiative move 2 is still very useful. And don't worry about using the default move values because, you know, getting it 1 XP and getting a nice attack off with tip of the spear is absolutely worth this. And you're not going to be able to hit every formation every single cycle through your cards, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. So let's go there and let's go and get that off because that's really, really nice, and we can do that nice and early. So let's start doing some weaving as well. We want to go nice and early here, and we created dark on purpose so that we could do something like a Forceful Spirits or a Black Barrage. I think we're going to need to do the Black Barrage to get the range that we need to get on top of these guys. So we're going to use that. Then we're probably going to want to use a some way of getting away as well, I would suggest. So potentially we could use Eclipse to move away, but that seems like a little bit of a waste. I think a Lingering Rock could be useful here to just add a poison, potentially. That's something that we could consider. Because we don't have everything else you see is to do with shadows. That little symbol there with the circle with the stripes through, that is the shadow symbol. See, that's the shadow symbol. So that particular symbol is kind of like, we don't have any shadows right now, so it's not really working for us. So I think what we do is we use Black Barrage, and then we potentially use... Yeah, let's use Lingering Rot, I think. So 28 initiative is fairly early. I think we should be able to catch these guys off guard. Then I think I want the Drifter to go up here and potentially finish some people off. That could be very, very good for us here. So Bloodletting could be a really good way of doing that because we now have our +2. So Bloodletting is actually an attack 5. Very, very strong. So it would actually one-shot one of these guys. So if we do miss, then we've got that in our back pocket. Also, it would be very good at finishing off the Priest after the tip of the spear, I think. So I think Bloodletting is a nice, safe pick here. We don't really have anything else to play, I would suggest. We don't really want to use the bottom of draining arrows right now because we won't get, we won't get to recover a charge yet. Vile Assault, we don't really want to do because we don't want to spend a charge when we haven't taken any damage. So I think we'll probably use Prudent Preparation here. Actually, maybe we don't use Prudent Preparation because I think going after the 28 might be beneficial here. So let's go for Deadly Shot and let's go for Bloodletting. I think that's good. A little bit of a late initiative there. Like I would love it to go a little bit early, but if I want to weave between these two, I think we do want to go after the Deathwalker here. And then finally we have our Boneshaper, and you've probably guessed it. The aim of the game here is skeletons. So we are going to try and get more skeletons out for sure. We're also going to hope that some skeletons will die, or sorry, some enemies will have died by the time that we want to create it, so we can heal ourselves for 2 here. So we're going to go a little bit late and we're going to play Damned Horde. Return Servant is one I would try and avoid playing, although it may seem that all these skeletons are created equally. It may not matter which one you play. Having a move 4 in your back pocket, especially in a scenario where we're going to have to get over difficult terrain, can be quite useful. So I usually tend to keep the move 4 back because we'll need to do a bit of movement. Let's go on. We can go on 71 here, I think. Okay, so the Algox Guard, that's actually a really pretty horrible ability for them to have drawn against our death. We got punished there for our Deathwalker getting in, but hopefully if we can get lucky here with this, perhaps we can do some good damage. We just need to draw a +1, so use that as the move 2 to move there. We've got the tip of the spear now. Lucky +1. There we go. Better to be lucky than good, I always say. So again, see a very good use of that ability. Did some damage there, got a kill. That's a very effective turn right there. So now we can potentially do our Black Barrage, which is very nice. So we'll consume the dark and we'll go here and here. Oh, it's not a target 2, sorry, it's only a target 1, isn't it? Sure, let's just target this one, I think. And we're going to mark the target. So now if that target dies, we're going to be able to get that shadow created, which should be very nice. And I think, although it's a little bit risky, I think we can risk it for a biscuit for the loot here. It's always try and pick up loot whenever you can. And also we get to poison this, which means that this skeleton can move here and attack when the poison target, which would be very nice. And what do we get in our loot bag? 2 gold. Pretty much the worst thing you can get at the beginning of the game is 2 gold. Right, so hopefully now the Bloodletting should, unless we miss, and we get very unlucky, but the Bloodletting should hopefully work. Very good. All damage. And now we create that shadow, which is great. I think we can put the shadow... Doesn't really matter too much where we put the shadow at this stage. I'm going to put it there, I think. And then because of the Bloodletting ability, we can get the charge on Crushing Weight back, which is great. So we will do that. I think they've changed the way this looks. Not sure why there's 2 buttons there, but I'm going to trust that that worked properly. So this is actually, so a little bug that I've seen recently is just that it sometimes shows the wrong character's portrait down here. It's actually the Deathwalker here. You can see by the blue hex. The Deathwalker will use it. Oh, there we go. Leather armor doing its job as well. Ah, but a miss. An unlucky miss, I would say. But we can get another skeleton out, which we will do. Two skeletons out. And now we can play this and actually heal 2 because an enemy did die, which is good. Some unfortunate damage there, but hey ho. All right, next round. So we're in a bit of a situation where I think we can try and get in here to maybe do a formation with our Bannerspear, but we're a little bit off the pace. So if we have a look at what we've got, combined effort, very good. Potentially rallying cry could be something that we could do. A little bit difficult though with the positioning. The skeleton will move onto here to attack there. So if we manage to get ourselves over to there, then that will work for rallying cry. The thing with formations sometimes to sort of get your head around is that it can be mirrored. So if you look at it from this direction, it might kind of make it a little bit more sense. Well, we have the skeleton there, we're there, so that would be doable. In order to get there, though, I'm going to need to use my boots. I'm going to need to do a move 4. And I am going to have to use my winged shoes to get jump so that I can ignore both the enemy and the difficult terrain that we need to move through. Now, this is very late initiative, so it's not ideal. Realistically, with a disarm, going early would be really beneficial, I would suggest. But I think, you know, for the point of trying to just, you know, hit a couple of really nice formations early on, this isn't too bad. I mean, disarming this type of enemy is never usually the goal because this enemy can do non-attack abilities, and disarm only actually prevents them from doing an attack action. So, of course, if they heal, it doesn't have any effect. The only other option is that we go for combined effort. So we go a little bit lower, maybe go on 32. So we could then move ourselves to here. That would be 4 movement, but we wouldn't need the jump. That's possible. We could do that. Also, we could just get like the drifter involved. But I think we want the skeleton there to help do this, I think. Well, we want to go early on the Boneshaper here because the flow of the Black River, you know, we can basically get a heal 3, which I think is just really useful right now. So we can definitely do that. And then I think potentially we're going to do a move 4, I would suggest. Because we need to get a bit of a move on ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck. So let's go 18. So let's work around this 18 initiative. So 18 is going to move to there. So that means maybe if we go for 32, we can get there. A little bit awkward. Would be nice to maybe use regroup, but I think we want to save regroup for the end of this room. So let's go for 32 there. So skeleton plus Bannerspear will hopefully get a nice formation there. If not, the drifter could always help if something kind of mad goes wrong. Speaking of the drifter, it doesn't really have much to do here, but probably regaining. We could, in theory, do a little heal and then potentially regain a charge and get some loot. We do have a very good loot ability if I've remembered to bring it. I can't remember if I have or not. Yeah, Violent Inheritance, very good loot ability because we can essentially attack. So I think if we can do that here, we can potentially get ourselves a bunch of loot. And we can use Vile Assault to get a heal. Oh, I love that. Okay, let's do that. Now we have our Knight here, which is our Shadow, sorry, that we want to use for sure. So we should use Fluid Knight, which gives us that big attack. Potentially that could be something very good that we could do. We could actually move the shadow and try and attack the priest with it as well, because that might actually be a little bit more beneficial, especially if we do it early. Okay, so let's go dark fog. And then we can kind of move it, and then we can use fluid night. And if we can kind of make this happen before the Bannerspear takes their turn, which we can, then there's a good chance that we can get another shadow, which would be quite nice. Okay, I think we've got everything we need. Okay, that all looks very nice. Looks like it's in our favor with the enemies going later than us. Disappointing attack from the skeleton, but that's probably nothing to be particularly surprised at. So we'll do a heal here, and we will go up here just so that we're kind of ready to go. Getting closer to the end of the room here. So yeah, we will move this guy, and you can move it to like on top of them or to the side of them. Melee attacks are basically adjacent. Melee attacks can be, basically the same hex or adjacent hex. We'll just move it on top for the thematic reasons. So we'll confirm targets. So we'll attack for 4, and we will mark it, hopefully. Nice. That was kind of like a pretty ideal situation for us there. We get the XP, we get the mark. That's really nice. So with Vile Assault, we're going to move. Doesn't really matter where we move here, but let's move to there just to give ourselves a bit of breathing room. Heal 2. Now, even though we only heal 2, that does still use a charge. So importantly, even if you don't need the health, continuous health will still use the charges, so that's something to consider. So let's hope here. I mean, we have to draw a +2. That's probably pretty hard. +1. Would have been nice to have drawn it, because then we would have gotten more loot. Ooh, Snow Thistle, very good. Getting herbs early is always nice. So we'll end our turn there. So now we've got stuff for the charge. We could go and finish this enemy off, but actually it's going to attack with disadvantage onto the Drifter, so I don't think we need to worry about it. So the way that disadvantage in attacks work is that if it's a ranged attack, then if you are next to an enemy, then you have disadvantage. And because there isn't a move, this won't be able to move away. And it will always still focus the closest enemy. So it will focus the Drifter, even though it will be attacking it at disadvantage, which might not be the best thing to do. Oh, there we go. I got a bit unlucky there with our draws on this character, but I mean, wound is very strong, so we'll take that. That means that wound is basically they will take 1 damage at the beginning of each of their turns, and poison is just +1 damage to all attacks against the target. So wounds are better than poison, I would say, but poison does block heal actions. So when you do a heal action, ooh, interesting thing we could do here. Is this a target too? It's not. So we could save the summon. That's an option. Or we could let the summon die. And if we do that, then our persistent ability goes off, which then means that actually he will die. It's a tricky one because I actually quite like... No, let's do it, shall we? So let's let him die. Which then means that our other ability went off. So the reason why that happened was because we had this bottom ability up, which played earlier on in the round. So this is great. We're doing very well, I would suggest here. So now is a great time to just move towards the door and potentially sequence up a long rest. My advice for this kind of thing is never open a door when you are kind of down half of your cards or more. That kind of level. Because Otherwise, you are just opening yourself up to potentially being attacked and then being in a position where you can't long rest safely. If you ever get an opportunity to long rest safely with no enemies, then do it. And opening doors is the biggest way to control the speed of a scenario for yourself. So definitely think about that. So what we could do is we could play regroup. And then what we could also do is we could play our summon. Although I am a little bit worried that this is a very kind of chock-a-block room. Although we could just discard it and re-get it. So I could show you how to discard summons. That might be a good thing to show you guys. So we'll play regrouping at all costs here. We just want to move towards the door. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That gets us pretty close. We probably don't have much else to do, unfortunately, on this character. So that's a bit of a shame. We could definitely get our sleeper, though. We could definitely do that maybe on the next turn. We just long rest. Okay, so we want to finish this guy off. So you sustain momentum maybe to just try and kill. And then potentially we can just move maybe with draining arrows. Something like that. I don't know if there was a little bit of a bug there, but it looked like we didn't get the shadow. So that must be a bug. I feel like we should have got the shadow there. When you or any of your attacks, you may or may not target when it dies. Yeah, I think there might have been a bug there where the shadow should have been created. So still early access, folks, but we played well. The game didn't reward us, unfortunately. It's just the way to think about it. Which is a little bit frustrating because obviously we could have teleported to it, moved around. We could have potentially made our summon, which should have been really good for before we go into the next room. But instead we're going to have to kind of maybe do some suboptimal things just to kind of waste a few rounds. So, bit frustrating there, but early access game and all that. So we'll get the charge back on Crushing Weight. I probably shouldn't have played this actually, because realistically leaving loot bags behind, especially on the first scenario, is a bit of a no-no for me. I will always try and get them. So I probably wasted that move because now I'm going to probably only be able to move 2. So that was a little bit of inefficiency there from me. So let's stick this on. Is it just a single target? It's just a single target. Better on me or on you? Well, probably. That's a good question. Who's it better on? I mean, we're going to long rest regardless, so let's just put it here. Now let's play our reinforcement. So this summon is pretty good for potentially creating formations. It doesn't do any damage. It only moves 2 and has 1 health. But very good for just creating a formation for you. And also tanking an attack as well. So summons are always seen as going before you in terms of initiative. So if your initiative is tied between yourself and a summon, it's going to choose the summon over you. Okay, so because there's no enemies in the room, the skeleton doesn't have anything to focus on. So when there is no enemies in the room, the summons will focus on the summoner. So they will move closer to the summoner if possible. Now we can confirm movement, but there's nowhere for it to really go here, so it shouldn't move. But let's move ourselves here. Get some loot, which is quite nice. Oh, and then I don't have line of sight, do I? Aha! That's a mistake. So if I use the undo action here, if you want to activate the undo action, you do need to go into your settings, go to options, and I think is it in other? Controls. It is in here somewhere. Show action rollback controls. It is there. Yeah. So just make sure that you have that on, otherwise you won't be able to do the undo action. So I'll grant this first, but this goes to show you that you need line of sight of even your summons to cast something like this. You know, it might not feel that way, but you do. A bit unfortunate because we don't quite get to kind of get onto the difficult terrain, which is what I really wanted to do there. Okay. So we will move up. Just moving towards the door now. Again, so now we're in a position where potentially to get sleeper, we should probably, well, we could long rest to make it nice and easy. So I think that's probably what we're going to do. What I will show you as well is that how you can potentially discard your summons. So there's a few ways to do it. You can inspect your character. And then I think you can click up here to deactivate it. Why would you want to deactivate a summon? Well, if it's a summon that you can replay, you can obviously earn more XP by playing it again. But also by putting it into your discard pile, it means that you have the potential of adding it back into your hand, adding stamina. So I do have some guides on hand management techniques. I'll put some links to both my hand management guide and my monster focus guide. Both of them were originally done for Gloomhaven, but the advice is still golden here in Frosthaven. So I'll put links to those videos down below if you'd like to learn more about them, because they are quite in-depth subjects that I can't easily explain here. But just so you know, there are good reasons for doing this to gain XP, gain an extra card in your hand for an extra card play. So we will do that. If it was a lost summon, then you absolutely would never discard them unless you were playing a certain character called the Spellweaver, if you remember Gloomhaven. Okay, so we are long resting here. We can probably... we could probably long rest here. I mean, it is a little bit weird, right? We still got plenty of turns, but I think, you know, for the purposes of trying to make this scenario a little bit faster, I'm going to do that. Although I don't think I really want to do it here. So I'm going to kind of move with the Drifter because we want to try and get some charges back, I think. Oh, they've added the new display. Oh, great. This has actually been patched in. Must have been fairly recently. So you can now see when you're going to earn XP on your charges. So you get 1 XP the first time, no XP, 1 XP, no XP, 1 XP, no XP. So the reason why this is an important display is that, for example, you can just keep jumping back over the 1 XP, right? You could go 1 XP, then go down to 0, then jump it back up to 1, earn 1, then jump it over. So you can kind of like min-max a little bit with what you want. But I can see here that I'm missing a charge on each, so that is great. We will do that. And then I think I probably just want to move on the Deathwalker right now. Yeah. So we're kind of wasting a couple of turns here, but the reason is that we are kind of recollecting our resources, if you like. Don't think we actually have any more to gain, so we don't need to use that. Quite surprised that she's next. We could heal the guard, but I wouldn't worry about it particularly. This guard, once you've cleared this room, this guard is relatively safe, unless you decide to retreat back into this room. So we are going to get rid of... we do need some moves, I think. Command the Wretched is kind of an interesting one to play later. Move 4 we still need. Fell Remedy we still need. Probably Angry Spirits is the one to get rid of here, because although it did do some work, the bottom, I don't really intend on playing the top. Although you could be greedy and keep this just to try and earn 2 XP. I feel like we're going to be quite comfortable in getting through this scenario, so I'm not too worried about it. But certainly there's some min-maxing of XP to be done there. In terms of cards to get rid of here, I think we'll probably be looking at something... potentially Resolved Courage, but the 10 initiative was quite good, but I do think the ability itself is quite hard for us to do. So we're really just using it as a move to 10 initiative, which is obviously not the best thing in the world to use a card for. We could get rid of regroup because we've kind of used it once. And I don't feel like we're probably going to need to use it again. Unless we decide to move some summons around potentially. But I think regroup might be a safe one to get rid of. Now, hopefully, we should be in a really good position now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can open the door. The only problem with that is that we won't really have anything great to do. Open the door and then we don't have much great to do. We would have tip of the spear in this direction. But that would rely on the enemy being, you know, fairly close, I would say, to us, which isn't likely, I would say. We could use deflecting maneuver just to kind of give us a little bit of extra tankiness. That's not a bad idea. You know, although we won't be able to perform the attack, just giving all attacks targeting us disadvantage could be quite good. And in theory, what we could also do is then go late on our other characters to... let's get a long rest here. We could go late on our other characters to try and, you know, wait for them to move a bit closer and then we can kind of do something. Now, we do need to get another summon up. That we absolutely do need to do because this summon is lagging behind, unfortunately, and it's going to get stuck in traffic. So we do absolutely need to get another one out. So a late kind of move for player summon in the next room, I think, is good for us. As we know, the Bannerspear is opening the door nice and early. Drifter is probably on a long rest, I would suggest. Probably for the best, actually, yeah. So this is a little bit of a weird one. I don't always recommend you opening a door while your characters are on a long rest. I think in an ideal situation here, I actually kind of finished this room a little bit too quick, if anything. Is in an ideal situation here, we would long rest on all of our characters at the same time, so then we're all refreshed and ready to go. That is what ultimately you should aim for. So I could, in theory, kind of like just waste a few turns with the Bannerspear here, wait for everybody to catch up, but for the brevity of this video and just getting on with it, I'm not going to do that. But best practice here really would be to wait here, recover all of your cards on everybody, so everybody is kind of at full health or almost at full health, recovered their items, recovered their cards, and ready to go. But I'm being impatient.
You run inside the gate, and the breadth of...
Okay, we'll skip that just so that we can keep going. So we've got lots of enemies here. Huge room, very full room. We've got 4 guards at the back there. So they are going to be targeted by these guards in the middle here, and these priests are most likely going to focus on these guards at the back and not on us. However, this archer at the front is definitely going to focus on us, and so is this elite guard here, this archer here, and this archer here. So yeah, we're definitely going to get attacked a lot here. So we will use deflecting maneuver. I think we're going to get attacked by pretty much everything here, unfortunately. And it's going to be for a pretty decent amount of damage. The archers are also making traps, which can be useful because you can push them into traps or pull them into traps, but ultimately kind of help defend them a little bit. Especially against things like our summons, which then won't kind of have a very clear path to just running up to. Okay, well that's relatively good. I think we'll just take 1 damage there. For the most part, you should probably use your shield at the first opportunity, but I know some big attacks are coming. See, this particular trap is very difficult for us because there's no way around this trap. A miss, that's nice. I think ideally we wanted to miss out of one of these guards. They're going to hit a bit harder. Here's a ×2, +2. Well, there's a shield. It wouldn't have made any difference to the amount of health that we actually lose, but that's pretty brutal. That was a very rough round for us there. And that's how, like, even if you're a tanky type character, that doesn't mean that you're just a soul tank, you know? That's one round, and we're basically dead. I would say that we probably got... That was about average luck as well, because we had the miss, but we also had the ×2. And the +2, actually. We had the ×2 and the +2 in the same draw. That was probably a little bit unlucky to get both the ×2 and the +2. Okay, this is very awkward now because we can't actually get in and summon at the same time. This is actually very awkward for us. What we could do, because this door has become incredibly jammed, what we could do is we could move to here, take the 3 damage for the trap, not ideal, then summon. That would put us at 1 health. Very risky play. Very, very risky play. However, it would set us up to do Wastrel potentially next turn. Risk it for a biscuit, I think, is the name of the game here. I wouldn't recommend doing this very often, or at all, really. I think we'll put the summon here. Because obviously being at 1 health is not advisable, really. Okay, we'll do our long rest and we'll get that extra HP because of continuous health. Let us get rid of... I usually get rid of like Unbreakable or Relentless, one of these two, because they don't really do too much, for the way that I like to play. They're usually just late initiatives, regain stuff. You only really need one of them. Now, the Drifter is not being the superstar that he normally is, so we definitely need to change that, I think. Okay, what should we get rid of? Now, we could play Eclipse in this next room, which might actually be a really good thing to do, because we kind of need to get shadows going fast. And so we could use the top of Eclipse to just get a load of shadows out, and then we can start hitting things. Could be a very good way of doing it. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it could be quite good. We also have a pretty good Dark Fog turn. Attacking these two. For 3 with Curse. I mean, ideally you want to hit 3 things, but 2 things is not bad value. And we also have our double burn, don't we? We need to do a double burn. So potentially, do we have a bottom burn? I actually don't know if we do. Well, we have Fluid Night. No, that's not a burn. We have Shadow Step, which is a burn. So Dark Fog plus Shadow Step does actually kind of get us going and creates a shadow. But we'd have to do it quite late, I would suggest. Okay, I'm okay with that. So I think we're probably going to get rid of then. It's probably... And it's PS2 though, although we do have Anger of the Dead for the priests. Okay, let's get rid of... Black Barrage. Black Barrage? No, Forceful Spirits. Forceful Spirits. Mainly because Black Barrage gives us the ability to move shadows around. And if we're going to play Eclipse, we want to move shadows. Okay, good. So we are definitely good. So we know what we're doing here. We're going to play Eclipse, and I think we're going to play Shadow Step bottom. So we're going to create a hell of a lot of shadows. Now, the only reason why I think this is kind of okay is this particular situation is there's only 1 room left. If there was more rooms left and we knew that we had to kind of go for another 10, 12 rounds, something like that, then This might be a little bit more risky, but honestly, we probably can wrap this scenario up very quickly if we're aggressive here. So we're going to take the aggressive line. And we want to go late because we don't want to be targeted. We could also set ourselves up for a nice formation sort of here. So we've got, potentially we've got a decent formation there. Although, would it be nice if we could bring him in? Do we have the pull? That was the question. 2 at range 3. We do. So we could use Javelin and tip of the spear because we can use the guard as our ally to pull this archer here and then we can attack. I think that's very, very good. We do need to heal though. We absolutely need a heal. So we can use Fell Remedy. If we... Ooh, we could... Ooh, could we? Interestingly, could we use the dark that Eclipse makes? So if I was aggressive and went on 19, let's say, that creates dark. Then Fell Remedy could use that dark to heal for 4 onto the Bannerspear, which is quite nice. I think that's quite good. And then we could use Exploding Corpse Bottom. No, because that could do some damage. That could really hurt us, actually. I don't think we want to do that. Maybe Malicious Conversion. So what's that, 26? We do 26. This is very risky, though, because we're putting the Deathwalker right in the mix. I really need to get over that. Maybe it's time we play Sustain Momentum. Because we need to get over that. We are not helping right now. Sustain Momentum would be on the next 6 move abilities game, move 2. But the problem is that if we don't move this turn, 2, 3, 4, then we're not really helping. So there's a move 4 there. There is also a move 4. Oh, we could use the bottom of Violent Inheritance as a burn. We could be aggressive with our burn here. And attack something. That could be quite good. And then potentially use Deadly Shot as well, just to kind of... yeah, we could use Deadly Shot as well. Just to poison something up as well. That could be useful. Okay, I think we have our turn. This has gotten a bit messy, but I'm okay with this. The main thing we're trying to do is just sort of... you know, kind of be a little bit more aggressive than maybe we usually would. Just because of the way this door is jammed up. Otherwise, we're going to end up just taking lots of nothing turns in the door. But we're going to have to do something. Hopefully, these guys can sort of fight it out. And the retaliate that the city guards have will actually do a really good job of dealing. Okay, so... so we place it in the hex we're occupying. I mean, it kind of makes sense to go and get this loot bag. So we've got one there, and now we can be kind of aggressive. I definitely want to put one kind of there, I think. I want to put one there. I definitely want to put one sort of there. That gives us a nice kind of spread. And we've done Ravager, which is very nice. Perks are very important to try and do if you can. Don't lose a scenario for doing a perk, though. Always try and win the scenario first. Okay, great. So we can sort of decline the move here, but then we can pull this archer into here. And then we can use our tip of the spear to attack these guys here. Nice. So we're doing quite well with our formations so far, I would say. We've got our big heal, which we can do here. I mean, it's probably only going to last a round, but it's something at least. We do need to be in a position to do this Wastrel thing. I don't know if we're ever going to get into that position, to be honest. If we go here, that does block this archer from being able to move back and attack without disadvantage on the skeleton. So we're going to do that. Okay, so that's actually the Deathwalker, and yeah, we will use this. Hopefully the +1/+1. That is very unlucky. Oh, of course it could move that way. I forgot about that way. Yeah, it could move that way. I think I will save this summon, you know. I think I will. Okay. So we can go move to 4 here. Skip the movement. Then hopefully we can kill this archer. That would be nice. Not quite. Oh, no, actually, yeah, no, we did do it. It was 3 damage. Oh, that's good. And then if we deadly shot up this guy. There's a bit of poison on there, which should help them chew through that a little bit more. We can now heal as well with the Drifter, potentially next turn on the Bannerspear, so that's good. Wow. Okay, we are getting unlucky. That is pretty unlucky. I think we have to get rid of at all costs. I don't think we're going to need the reinforcement, and it just doesn't really do much. But that is... We had ×2 drawn twice now. Oh, well, that's the juxtaposition. I guess 1 card across 2 attacks. Maybe that's okay. We haven't lost any guards yet, but this looks like a losing situation to me. Unless they do nothing next turn. But the strengthen is very scary. They have some big attacks. So I wouldn't be surprised if we lost 1 guard next turn. Which is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. Okay. So we're in this weird situation where the Drifter has kind of gotten a bit stuck. I would like to sort of change that, really. 1, 2, 3. And then we can kind of just start wailing on this guy. I think that's what we want to do. We probably only want to use Sustain Momentum. I think. We do have the ability to use Resolved Courage here, which could be quite nice. So we could just immobilize these guys and run away. That could be very strong, actually. Very strong. Maybe we do that, yeah. Okay, maybe we do that. Then that means that we can go late here. That's great. And we can go late with our summons, I think. But we do need to heal. We probably can't go too late. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe we could go quite late. We definitely want to play the top of flow of the Black River. And maybe I could just use command the Wretched to... No, I don't think I'm going to be able to use that. I think potentially we just do a late move. Yeah. With the heal. Now, Deathwalker's in a little bit more of a weird spot. We definitely want to do some damage here. So we can do something crazy. We could do Lingering Rot. Lingering Rot here. We could try and save this guard by moving a shadow. We could use Fluid Knight to just kind of attack this guy. could make a summon, which wouldn't be a terrible thing to do. Ultimately, I think we need to use some of our shadows now. We've got so many, it kind of makes sense. I think a lingering rot here is quite nice, isn't it, really? And then what we could do is we could move these as well. That doesn't mean we're going to get attacked here, though. Interesting. Oh, we could use a bottom of Fluid Knight. That is an option. But that is a very strong ability that we probably don't want to do. Decisions. Very tricky, I think. Because there's a great chance that we take damage from both the priest and the archer here if we don't do something about that. Unfortunately, we didn't bring our card which would allow us to attack everything, right? We did have the... there is that card that I didn't bring because I wasn't necessarily planning on using loads and loads of shadows. But I could, for example... We could Lingering Rot here. I think ultimately I might need to use the bottom of Fluid Knight to move away. I think that's the play. I don't love it, but I don't think I have much of a choice. Okay, oh, we got lucky with the guards, though. Not that that really... Now I wonder if I even bother using Resolve Courage or not. I mean, it's still a very good attack. Attacking two things. Yeah, we got very unlucky there, but I think we still do it. You know, it's poison on two things. It's very simple. The Immobilize will unfortunately not really do anything for us. Do we move to go loot? Yeah. Ooh, I can run away here, can't I? That might make all the difference, you know? Do I move a summon? One of those kind of turns where you feel like you outsmarted the enemy with the Immobilize, but didn't quite get it. Which is unfortunate. Okay. So... I think the Lingering Rot is just the way to go here. We get 2 XP. Yeah, it only attacks 2 things, so it's not great. But these guys are kind of really being a thorn in our side right now. Sure. And we will mark this guy. Or both of them. Both of them? This guy. Not quite sure how that's working, but we'll see. Oh, I see. It's asking me individually. No, we just have 1 mark on this guy. I mean, we can only have 1 mark at a time. And then we will put that up. And then we will use the bottom of Fluid Knight there. And the good thing about this character is we don't really need to move much, so we'll just move like that. So the immobilize doesn't affect us greatly. Okay. Oh, that was why I needed to go there, was to get the charge, wasn't it? Yeah, I kind of scamazed my drifter there with that move, didn't I? Yeah, I really did. But having said that, do I actually need it? Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have, but it's not everything. Okay. I'm going to kind of hope we get the kill here. Nice. Probably the first time where the drifter has probably looked like the more underwhelming of the mercenaries we have, I would say. Typically the drifter always looks quite strong, but with this many mercenaries, with 4 mercenaries, I think it's a bit more difficult for him. He's going to get retaliated. Unfortunate. We're still working towards this Wastrel thing. I think potentially we go here. Try and draw it out a little bit. And also make sure that we get this loot. Still trying to loot as much as we can. Ooh, another snow thistle. A heal and a bless. A bless is the opposite to curse. So with blesses, that puts a ×2 into their deck. So now we are more likely to be kind of crit against, if you like. We should probably short rest here, I think. What is our battle goal here? Yeah, we've done that. Assistant. We should be able to do this, and we can maintain that, and we've done this. Okay, great. We're on course to finish all of our perks. Okay. Exploding corpse could be interesting, couldn't it? But only if we move them. This guy's going to probably just go here and attack this. Not exactly what we were looking for here. I mean, we could just use the bottom of Command the Wretched here to do an attack 5. Try and get a kill. Could be useful. Just looking for ways to get XP here, really. I think at this stage of the game, really XP is... we should be able to clean this scenario up quite nicely. We've got plenty of cards in hand. We're not risking losing out of stamina. We are on a little bit dodgy health, a few characters, but it's pretty manageable with the board state. So I don't think we need to worry about that. Yeah, okay. Exploding corpse, I think, might be possible. Come on, the Wretched to maybe just kill this, and then we can focus on moving around a little bit more. We're short resting there. Drifter doing drifter things. I think it's probably about time that we maybe stepped up to do precision aim or something like that. Maybe we might not actually ever get around to that. Or we could just go for a nice heal. Does feel like a bit of a waste, but we could heal potentially the Deathwalker and then just regain some benefits, some bonuses. And so the Deathwalker, I think using Anger of the Dead here would be quite good. So Anger of the Dead allows us to basically remove shadows and gain a bunch of pierce and a bunch of extra damage. So for every shadow that we remove, we're going to gain an XP and that pierce and range as well. So really good against these priests. So we could go a little bit hard against this priest. That would be an attack of 2. So we could go 2, 3, 4, 5. So we could attack the priest for 5 potentially. Not bad. I also quite like the idea of making the summon just to get an XP out. I'm a little bit nervous about this guy. Let's get a summon out, shall we? Let's get a summon out. It's a little bit it's maybe a little bit greedy, but I think it will be okay. Okay, so we'll do our short rest. I think that's actually one of our best ones we probably have left, and one of our easiest ones to hit that we have left. Because it's going to become increasingly hard to do tip of the spear because this room's quite big. So I think we redraw on that. Yeah, there we go. We do lose the move 4, which is something, I would say. You know, we do need those moves. I think we do want to potentially go for a javelin set for the charge type play. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, potentially after this one has had a move, I think. 21 versus 21-6. Yeah, maybe a little bit awkward. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and then we only have range 2, or we hit that with a javelin. 3, 4. Oh, I suppose I can go up this way, couldn't I? I'm just trying to look for opportunities to use combined effort, and I don't know if they're going to come. We might have to use deflecting maneuver instead, which is okay. In which case, we'll go 6, I think. Okay, so we'll go up here. And we'll use our javelin. And there's that curse. Or one of those curses. You can always check your own deck by inspecting your character. So if you inspect your character, you can see what your attack modifiers are like. To see, you know, how likely you are to do certain types of damage. You can also see what items you have left to use. So I still have my winged shoes. Anything that's got a box around it is basically available to use, and any loot that you've collected as well, and your passive abilities as well. Okay, drift of time. So we're gonna heal here. Big heal. And then we're going to regain charges there. Okay, that's not too bad. Deal with that. Skeleton gets the job done. Skeleton. Very good. Might be on for Wastrel here, hopefully. Interesting. I kind of... Oh, he's healing anyway, right? He's moving. He's going to attack him. Just trying to think how I'm going to get this Wastrel trigger. It's going to be tough, actually. It is going to be tough. I think I move here and I kind of hope that he draws a -2, right? Because it's got to be negate 2 or less damage from it. Here's hoping. May not happen, but you can only put yourself in a position. Okay. So we're going to move some of these. So I'm going to move this one here. This one's here. And then this one to here. And then we use Sunless Apparition to summon Shadow Beast. I think he's ranged, right? I know he's melee. Okay. Interesting. Could maybe help formation then if I put him this side. Little demon. Very cool looking demon, I would say. Don't do it! Ooh. So close. Ooh. Oh, no, it had to be -2, right? Damn it. Yeah, just take the damage. At this stage, I think I just take the damage. Okay. So, what do we want? We've got deflecting maneuver, potentially. Could be quite nice to do some tanking if we get ourselves in the right kind of tanking spot. Alternatively, we could try and get like a rallying cry off by using combined effort to move something. Well, in theory, we can get it off here, right? Already. I think my problem with that, though, is that it doesn't really achieve much because we can probably kill with everything that we have here. I don't think we really care about disarming right now. Whereas deflecting maneuver, we could, in theory, kind of attack this, or well, we can go down there and attack that, right? Which I think is probably... Oh, no, we can't. We don't have enough movement. Okay, well, I think the job for the Deathwalker has become to kill this. So we can use Call of Doom to attack from that hex and attack for 1. Not the best, but it does do something. Alternatively, we can use Anger of the Dead. So I think we do this and this and we see what the enemy does. Because if they don't attack, then maybe we can change what we do. Drifter, still chilling at the back. Still needs to kind of get moving. He's just very slow right now. I should have probably used the movement abilities. I fear it may be too late. I suppose I could short rest and just try and go for it. But I fear it may be too late. I will say that one of the problems when you're playing, especially a scenario like this, is that if you're playing 4 players, it becomes very crowded. It can be difficult for each character to kind of have equal effect, if you like. One of your characters is probably going to end up having a bit of a bad time, especially if you're playing solo because you're trying to keep up with what's going on with all 4 mercenaries. That can be really tricky. We need to short rest because we might want to burn a card, so we definitely need to short rest there. That's frustrating, but we're on 1 health, so we can't not burn that. Draining arrows. It's a very good card, but that's not what we're looking for now. We are looking for sustained momentum, and then potentially like deadly shot. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it doesn't get there, does it? Maybe prudent preparation to just pop a load of heals again. Oh no, we can't because it's a top ability. Yeah. So this is what I mean. I would be sacrificing, which I mean it is what it is, I suppose. But we're sacrificing a turn's worth of movement to gain 2 later, which, you know, essentially I could move 4 then 2, and in the same amount of time I've covered the similar area, you know, which is kind of my problem with these with this. Is that because I didn't play it at the right time, I've kind of blown myself out a little bit. Well, we'll try and make up with it with a Vile Assault, shall we? 2, 3, 4, on this guy, on this priest. And then for you, we need some health, but also we just need to be attacked. That's really what we need to do here. So we can use Decaying Will, maybe. Poison this priest. Potentially we can heal. If we'd gone 30, stuff would have happened, I expect, by then. Shadow Beast. Sure. We will mark that one. Kind of hoping that we get this one attack off here. Come on. Nice. I don't perceive this is really going to make a difference here. So we're actually going to probably move towards this loot. There's a lot of loot here, so in theory we could just do that with the Drifter. Maybe we should just do that. We do have combined effort now instead of deflecting maneuver, which is interesting. On this guy, that's very powerful, so I think we take it. Still gets the same amount of XP, and then we can get ourselves this loot bag as well. Full greed. Always the best. Oh, he's going to heal it off. I didn't check what he was doing. Oh, he's healing the priest. That's fine. He's healing the archer. It's not so bad. I am trying to move through this scenario quite quick, but, you know, you can always, it is always good practice to check to see what the enemies are doing. Don't ignore what the enemies are doing. I'm very used to the kinds of abilities they can play, so it doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, I will definitely say don't take that for granted. You know, you do have to pay attention to what the enemies are doing. And sometimes be the difference between winning and losing. Well, that was very nice, I would say. Where should we put it? Probably there. Some nice shadows. Okay, so what's he doing? He's attacking for 3. We're trying our best here. I'm going to do this even though it's disadvantaged because it's a ranged attack, because I think getting the poison here is more important right now. Oh, there you go. Still got to do a damage. We'll get some healing here. And enough healing so that if we do, he does draw the -1, which is what we're going to hope for here. We are okay. Ah, come on. Apparently not lucky. Apparently not lucky. Right, there is so much loot back here. Oh my lord. Definitely want to be focusing on getting that. Although we do have a really nice rallying cry from this position as well. So a nice early rallying cry, get that XP is good. But we definitely should be focusing now on loot. I think that is a very smart thing to do. We could also potentially just blow this guy up. Get an XP. Not the most efficient use of Exploding Corpse, but of course, at this stage, I don't think we really care. Do we have our loot action still? Or did we get rid of it? Oh, we got rid of it. Violent Inheritance. That would have been so good right now. We certainly need to see if we've got somebody with a loot 1. Try and make use of it. Okay. Who does have a loot 1? I think we have a loot 1 on the... we do have a loot 1 here, don't we? I could short rest. So what we could do is we could sort of short rest it and discard this. If we do that, though, we can't get our rallying cry, which is a bit of an upset. I think we'll have enough time to loot again. So perhaps I'd long rest. We let this thing kind of happen. And then we replay the Sunless Apparition. Because this is a replayable one. So we can get this card back. So if we long rest here, that can work really well in our favor. We're still searching over there for that elusive perk. Which we're not going to get again. We may just not get that perk. I did say it was a difficult one. Okay. So Rallying Cry. Nice. And we will just move and pick up this one bag of loot here. Loot lumber. Okay. Guess we sacrifice this one, loot that one. Sure. Oh no. Well, sometimes then that just happens. Get some hide there. I mean, at least we are pretty efficiently looting, I would say. There's a couple of bags at the back here we might want to try and get. That is something to think about. In fact, actually, I might put the drifter down in this bit. Crushing. Oh, hang on. This is a good example of which one is actually the best one to get back here. So, if we get back continuous health, then we can get an XP. If we get back crushing weight, we are currently on 1 XP, right? So I think we get back continuous health. If I'm understanding that UI correctly. Now we get back crushing weight with this one. Essentially, you want to go 6. You want to put it up to 6, up to 4, up to 2, right? I think. And there we have it, victory. So we'll check out the stats. But a very, very good, I would say a very good first scenario, pretty much for everybody. Oh, did we must have, I must have lost track of that. I thought we got that, but I must have lost track of it. A very easy thing to do when you're not concentrating and when you're playing 4 mercenaries. Hitting the battle goals can be difficult. So yeah, I definitely let one slip there because I should have been easily able to achieve that. Shows you the benefit of playing co-op, really, because you're probably not going to forget something like that if you're playing co-op. But if you're playing 4 mercenaries solo, absolutely, it becomes difficult to manage both the characters and 4 battle goals, for sure. Okay, in terms of rewards, pretty good. Let's look at the stats. Yeah, not bad. Not bad, I would say. So what is that? We've got actually surprising amount of damage done by, is that the Bannerspear? Bannerspear had a great scenario there. Yeah, surprising really. And did the Drifter end up getting, the Drifter ended up getting the most XP, which I am surprised about. I mean, the Drifter generally usually does, but I actually felt like they didn't min-max particularly well, but I guess right at the very end there, we managed to capitalize on that healing to just get a few extra XP out of it. So that's pretty good. I'd say that the Boneshaper maybe a little bit underwhelming with the XP. Would have been nice to have gotten that one a few more there. Would have been nice to have got more like 8 or something like that. But that's not a bad spread, to be perfectly honest. Not bad at all. Okay, perfect. So let's now go to the Outpost phase. Okay, so with the Outpost phase, you will go through several kind of stages of the Outpost. The first one is an event. So whenever you go to the Outpost, return from a scenario, you will always resolve an Outpost event first. So this is the one that I've got. A little bit of a hard and tricky one for me to capitalize on because it's the first scenario. So it's hard for me to probably spend the 15 gold here, but we can try. We did collect quite a bit of loot, so we'll try and maybe do that. But the Outpost events are random. So there's a random deck of these, and they do get drawn out in a completely random order. It's one of those ways that Frosthaven can be a completely different experience, potentially, for you and your campaign to another person's campaign. The way that these events come up will shape some of your early decisions. And as you progress through the campaign, you will add more events to it. You will obviously remove events as well. So once you start to unlock things, events get added that are tied to the things that you've unlocked. Or if you've got certain parts in the story, then a story events might start coming up in your outpost, stuff like that. So it's quite thematic to where you are in your campaign. But everybody starts with the same outpost events in their deck, if you like, and then so that will get modified over time as you play. So hopefully we can afford to get some of this. I will probably say that getting wood is more efficient to begin with. Metal is not as useful right away, although both of them, they're pretty equally as useful here, I would suggest. Wood can be easier to come by than metal sometimes, but like I said, I don't think you need as much metal. So maybe we can try this. Do we have enough?
Marks down your order in
do.
his ledger.
All right, 5 lumber and 2 metal. Should be a few weeks before it gets here. What with the pass and all.
So what this is telling us is that we need to lose 15 shared gold to get those resources, and a new campaign event unlocked, which basically means that after a few weeks, so weeks in this game is done by this clock here, which is the calendar of the game. In the physical game, what you would be doing is actually putting stickers in the calendar so that when you hit that date in the calendar, you would have the reminder to resolve the event, right? But because this is digital, we don't have that physical aid to be able to teach us how to do that. So the way that this is going to work is that essentially in a few weeks, we will get these materials back from this guy. So we need to play a couple of scenarios, and then the outpost will trigger when we come back to the outpost after a couple of scenarios. Every time you do a scenario, it kind of is treated as 1 week. So going out and doing a scenario and then either completing that scenario, or if you fail it, retreating back to the outpost will advance by the calendar by a week. So that's kind of an important thing to say. So a couple of weeks, we should have that. So do we have the 15 gold? Looks like we do, just about. Wow, that's, yeah, okay. 6, 6, and 4. In fact, almost perfect. Although with no gold, it's going to be very difficult for us to actually, with no gold, it's going to be very difficult for us to upgrade our buildings. In fact, it'd be impossible for us to upgrade our buildings. So we really probably don't want to do this, I would suggest, because actually it will prevent us from making some progress in the outpost phase, which is something that I want to show. So what I've done is I've rolled back my save just so that we can have some gold so I can show you the outpost properly. I would probably advise if that was your first event, don't go for it actually, even though it is quite a good return on investment. You potentially missing out on a building phase early on might be not really what you want to do. So it's up to you. I think it would be an okay investment if you're planning on playing the game like kind of for a long time. It's not bad at all. But let's go through the outpost phase now and what you do. So now we are in the outpost. We've resolved our events. So essentially we've done kind of phase 1 of the outpost. Next up, we have the ability to craft, build, upgrade, check out our characters, buy stuff from the merchant, change over our cards or whatever kind of tinkering we want to do. If we'd leveled up, we could choose a new card for our character. If we had unlocked perks, then we could obviously select and unlock those perks while we're here as well. But this is the main outpost and we'll go over it in some detail here about what you have. So you have your character portrait up here and the resources that that character has. You'll notice that the resources are not shared between the characters. So every event that kind of asks you to contribute resources will come up with a screen, and then you can donate from your personal supply to that event or to that cause. So that's kind of how building works. A little bit different to how the board game functioned, which is in the board game, you would contribute all of your resources to a shared stockpile, and then you would pull from that stockpile. In this version of the game, in digital, it doesn't do that. Instead, everybody has their own resources, and that when you want to build something, you will donate to that building, and able to then, once everyone is donated and hopefully you have enough, then you can build, set it into the building kind of action, if you like. So you have your portrait up here and you have your individual resources, which are also not tradable as well. So you cannot trade them between characters. Then you have kind of what I would consider to be your shared resources, which is strictly your herbs. So shared resources are herbs in the purposes of digital. Again, this is a little bit different to how it worked in the physical game, where herbs were personal as well. But the way that it works in digital is that herbs are actually shared, and then when you brew a potion, you choose which character gets it. So a little bit different. It is much more friendly in digital than it is in physical, because in physical you could hoard those herbs and then potentially you could just brew a potion for yourself very selfishly. Whereas in this one, kind of everybody is brewing them together, and then I guess you would make the choice who's best suited to that potion. So you have your herbs up here. And what you're trying to hopefully get with herbs is you're trying to get herbs of different types, because you're going to combine herbs of different types to create potions. Then you have your morale. This kind of indicates the, if you like, the happiness of Frosthaven, the morale. It's pretty obvious what it does. Morale is quite important because at certain breaks in the morale track, you will unlock things. So the higher morale gets, potentially you will get new events will get unlocked. Things will happen in Frosthaven because the people are happy. Likewise, if it gets too low, same kind of thing can really happen. You can also spend morale to build more than one building in a outpost phase as well if you want to, which we will get into in a minute. You have inspiration up here. Inspiration is what you will earn if you are running less than 4 characters. If you are running 3, you'll gain 1 inspiration per scenario. If you're running 2, you'll gain 2. So you'll gain basically 1 deducted from 4. I can't explain this very well, but essentially it's 1 for every character that you are under 4. Something like that. What is inspiration? Well, inspiration can be used for spending on wild resources, or it isn't currently in the game for you to be able to do so, but that was what it did in the board game, and I'm sure it will probably end up being used in a similar way here eventually, as well as it is used to be able to complete personal quests in a row. So when your character completes a personal quest, you can spend inspiration to then immediately complete another personal quest drawn from the deck, which is very important if you want to try and keep up with the kind of progression if you're playing in a two-person party versus like a 4. because naturally a 4 mercenary party is going to retire much more frequently, going to retire more characters overall, going to unlock more stuff. Inspiration helps you fill that gap, because when you do retire, you get to basically double retire. So inspiration, you should be saving that really for retiring. So do that. But if you are playing kind of like 4 most of the time, and then occasionally you play 3 because somebody can't make it that night or something, then you might just use it as a wild resource. Defense. This is the defensive value of Frosthaven. So currently we are at 0. We don't have any pluses or minuses to our defenses. That will become important when we get attacked, which can happen through the outpost events. We have soldiers. This is the number of soldiers we currently have in our barracks. You can also click on the barracks to see how many you have. We have 4 out of 4 there. What these guys do is they actually help us repel attacks. So attacks are events that can come up in the game. They come up more frequently in the winter months than they do the summer months, but they can come up in summer. And attacks can be bad for a few different reasons. They can destroy buildings, which will kind of put you back a little bit in your progress, because you'll need to then repair them. It doesn't cost quite as much as a full rebuild, but you do need to repair them, which can obviously cost resources, as well as it can do things like lower morale and stuff like that, and just generally hurt some of your meta progression of the outpost. So it's usually a good idea to keep this kind of, you don't need to necessarily keep it completely at capacity 4 out of 4, but I would advise probably keeping it 3 or 2 at the bare minimum. If you have none, having no way to basically use advantage can be really bad, because there are crits. It works very much like resolving normal combat. You're drawing from a deck of cards, except those cards are +10, +20, -10, -20, rather than +1, +2 and stuff like that. So the margins are much bigger. So something to be aware of. There is your barracks. And then this is the prosperity, and this is how you level up your town. So our current level is 1, as you can see here, and we currently have 0 out of 5. So we need to get 5 prosperity to be able to level up the town. Leveling up the town is important because it unlocks new buildings you can potentially build, unlocks more upgrades that you can do to your buildings. You can earn prosperity in many different ways, usually by building things. Sometimes some events might grant it to you, or some of the scenario kind of like rewards, I believe, can sometimes give you prosperity. But another big way of doing that is retiring characters. So retiring characters will significantly help increase your prosperity as well. So something to consider if you're holding off retiring, but you're struggling to maybe upgrade your town, then perhaps it's because you're not retiring fast enough. Okay, great. So that is the top here for the most part, apart from this little dial in the middle, which we already touched on, which is the calendar. So there are 10 weeks of summer and there are 10 weeks of winter, and we always start week 1 of summer, and you will go through, and then when it becomes winter, you will switch to the Winter Outpost event deck and the Winter Road event deck, which are all generally harsher, a little bit meaner. You're going to take more damage, you're going to be attacked more. It's just a bit rough. But you've got 10 weeks to be able to improve both the town of Frosthaven's defenses, as well as your own kind of pile of resources, if you like, before you have to worry about that. So it's not a super pressing issue when you first start out. But certainly as you keep playing and you get closer and closer to winter, that's when you start to worry about potentially your defenses and things like that a little bit more, and having some resources in reserve to help kind of stave off some of those attacks or some of those negative effects that could come your way. Also here we have what we can do. So the way that building and upgrading in this game works is that you are only able to build 1 building per outpost phase unless you spend morale to do another one. Similarly with upgrade, you can only do 1 building or upgrade essentially without spending morale. And then this is like the event log. So we've resolved an event. So essentially we've resolved an event, but a new building could be constructed and a building upgrade is also potentially available. So we can see what we can do. Down on the bottom here, we have our buildings that we've already built. So we have the craftsman. This allows us to potentially craft items. So you can select your character, whichever character you want, using their personal resources to craft themselves an item. You have the merchant. This is where you can go and spend gold to potentially buy some items. And then you have the alchemist, and this is where you'll go to brew a potion. And because we do actually have a couple of herbs here, I will brew a potion here. If you don't want any spoilers, then turn away. The reason why these are all unknown is the idea of this game is that you are essentially going to mix and match all these different herbs to try and unlock the potions. You can look up a potion table if you want. I won't spoil it necessarily for you. But yeah, essentially you do this. You would select the herbs that you want to use. You can use 2 of the same. You can use 2 different. And then essentially you would research and you would brew a potion and then you can give it to somebody. So if you don't want to know the results of this potion, just turn away now briefly and come back in a few seconds. Okay, so we got the renewing potion, and then we can choose who we would like to do it. During your turn, recover up to 2 of your spent items. This would be really good on somebody who uses armor very regularly or uses boots very regularly, something like that. So I would suggest that, potentially it could be quite good on the drifter because we can, in theory, we could recover our amulet. So we could use our amulet several times. So I'd say the drifter is a pretty good candidate for this, or the Bannerspear, but we'll go with the drifter. Okay, so we're back after brewing a potion. What we'll do now is we'll go to our build icon here, and this is how we build buildings in the game and upgrade. So down here, you can see new buildings, available upgrades, and you can see wrecked buildings. This is ones that have been destroyed by attacks. So thankfully, right now, we have none. So we'll go to new buildings, and you can see all of the different buildings that we can currently build. So the first 3 things we have is boat, sled, and climbing gear. These things are actually more like equipment than they are buildings, really. And you need these to be able to access certain scenarios. So you don't need them right away, right from the get-go, but you will pretty quickly come across one that needs climbing gear. And then the other 2 I haven't actually come across yet, but I've gone down a very specific quest chain in my playthrough, so I'm not sure how quickly you can get to a scenario that needs them. But essentially, once you build them, that allows you to then have access to certain scenarios that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So that's worth knowing, as well as the boat does also change up some of the events. You've got mining camp, hunting lodge, and logging camp. These 3 things are just ways for you to buy a single resource of that type for 2 gold each outpost phase. So mining camp will allow you to, as a group, not individually, as a group, be able to buy up to 1 metal ore for 2 gold. And then you could also sell 1, I believe, for 2 gold or something as well. So you kind of got a bit of a conversion there. Generally speaking, selling it for that value is not a good idea unless you're trying to force a retirement or something. But I would usually suggest that you don't want to sell resources because resources are worth more than gold, or at least they're worth more than 2 gold for sure. So mining camp, hunting lodge, and logging camp. 1 for metal, 1 for hide, and 1 for wood. You have shabby wall, which is to do with your defenses. So if you build that will then improve your defenses. So let's say, for example, we want to go ahead and build the mining camp. We click on the mining camp. It tells us what we need. So we need 10 gold, we need 4 wood, we need 2 metal, and we need 1 hide. And what we get, so we would be able to buy and sell ore for 2 gold each, and we would gain 1 prosperity. So moving towards that 5 to try and level up the outpost. So this is why building is quite important, and why what I would always recommend is doing your building first. Always do your building first, because then you kind of commit all your resources to building and then go, okay, what do we have left? Oh, I have a bit of wood left. Okay, great. Then I'm going to maybe go and craft myself something. So obviously go and maybe check out what you might want to craft, so you kind of know what resources you might want to hold back, because this is collaborative. So if, say, for example, you really wanted 1 wood, you could say, well, I can't contribute 1 wood, but I could contribute 2 hide. I'm willing to do that, or something like that. So let's go to build. So we click build. and then we hit this donate button here, and then that will allow us to donate. Now, if you're playing multiplayer, this will all be done kind of simultaneously. So you'll select just your character. You can't force other people to donate if they don't want to. So it will just be down to your characters. Obviously, because I'm playing single player, I can allocate this however I like. So because I don't really have much in the way of resources here to contribute, I think we do have a lot of gold. We will do all 6 gold here. And we will do 3 gold here and 3 gold there. That seems quite fair. We do have quite a bit of wood here. We have wood there. Wood is quite good for this character, though, to try and get maybe some items as well as metal. So, and hide. But to be honest, all these characters want a bit of everything, really. Looks like we might end up having to do 1 each to keep it fair. Then we've got ore. We've only got 2 ore across the party, so unfortunately that's going to be that. And then hide. We've got 2 here. Let's do that because we haven't been super contributed loads here. Now that pretty much cleared us out, and unfortunately that will be the case. We did do a really good loot in that scenario, right? We looted every single loot bag, and you can see we still only just about scrapped together enough resources to be able to do our first build. Now we could have built maybe something else that maybe used, a little bit more hide or something, because the amount of resources that you need for each of the camps is a little bit different. So that is worth checking to see which one you might have the resources to do. But you should probably at the end of your first scenario have the ability to build one of the camps. There is really no preference which one you want to build first, I would say. Maybe you could make an argument that potentially the metal one is the best mining camp, just because metal is maybe a little bit rarer to begin with, but that's me very much speculating. I don't have the raw numbers on that for you, so I couldn't confirm if that's true or not. That's just a feeling that I have. So I'm going to go for mining camp, but yeah. You can also obviously see what other buildings might need and make a decision based on that. So now that's being built, and that will be built in a week. So when we come back, we go do a scenario and we come back, the mining camp will be built and will be ready to be used. So that's a good thing. Now we could, of course, also do an upgrade. So you can click on the available upgrades and see. Now upgrading the craftsman can be quite good because that will actually give you better items that you can then craft. So upgrading the craftsman quite early can be a good way of improving your character. So if you are struggling a little bit in terms of you struggling in scenarios, you're finding it difficult, you feel like, I could really just do with a few extra items to make it a bit easier for me, then maybe upgrading the craftsman a little bit earlier might be helpful to you, because it just gives you a few better items. Now they still cost a lot of resources to craft, so even if you upgrade this, there's no guarantee that you're immediately going to be able to craft a better item, because you're still going to need resources to be able to craft those items as well. So bear that in mind. And because we've already done a building, it's going to cost us 2 morale to be able to do this, but would also gain us that prosperity. The alchemist you can upgrade to level 2, and by upgrading the alchemist to level 2, that unlocks the ability to distill potions, which means that if you get, for example, a couple of herbs, let's go to the alchemist. I'll try and not reveal what we've already done. So let's say, for example, we brew this potion with these 2. And we didn't like that potion, we could then distill that potion and extract one of these 2 herbs back out to then use in a different potion. So that gives you the ability to essentially very quickly unlock all of the different kind of potions, if that's what you want for. So let's say, for example, we only ever find 1 flame fruit, but if we kept distilling the potion with that flame fruit, we could maybe make that 1 flame fruit go quite far. So that's something to kind of consider. Okay, so once you've done that, once you have made sure you've done your building and your party is ready to go, you've crafted potentially, you've built everything that you need, so you're kind of ready to go, then you can just go down to your world map and then you can select your next scenario and off you go. When you go to the next scenario, you will resolve a road event, which will be a different type of event from the outpost. It's a separate deck, but works in a very similar way. Events will be added and taken away from that deck over time. Like I said, there's a different one when it's winter. And you can kind of go ahead. Now, you have quite a few different scenarios to do. I believe I only have a strong foundation because of a personal quest, so that wouldn't be there if you didn't select that personal quest, so bear that in mind. Let me just back out of that a second. So the two missions that you will have is Algox Scouting and Algox Offensive. You'll notice the rewards are identical for both of them. They are quite similar scenarios. I would say that Algox Offensive is the quicker of the two and is probably a little bit more of an engaging scenario, but quite honestly, some people probably prefer Scouting to Offensive. They're both very similar and they both lead to the same kind of place. So you're not really hurting yourself by doing one or the other necessarily. You can kind of just do either one that you like the sound of a little bit more. And that's it. So hopefully that will give you a good understanding and give you a great foothold in Frosthaven to continue on. So there we have it. Hopefully you found that step-by-step guide really useful, and hopefully I've elaborated on some things that maybe you were unsure about. I do have more videos on these kind of more complex topics that we touched on, such as the monster movement and the focus, as well as your hand management. I will link those videos down below. They are about Gloomhaven, but honestly, it's the same game. It's the same game system. So the information there is still really valid here. So still definitely worth checking out. Once again, a big thank you to Ark and Snapshot Games for sponsoring this video. If you would like to check the game out, there is a link down in the description and in the pinned comment to check it out on Steam. But apart from that, I will catch you on the next Frosthaven stream, or in the next Frosthaven video, I expect. I will catch you guys next time. Bye.